Hi, my name is Steve Andrews, and I'd like to welcome you to the 2020 PSUG event that we're presenting. And we're going to be talking about a catastrophic fire that happened at Plummer Forest Products in Post Falls, Idaho, and how PlantPAx and the tools that are included in that package enabled us to get the system back up and running in record time. In fact, we got the whole thing done from fire to product out the door in 3 months, including the electrical. And at the time, I was working as a project manager for Advanced Electrical Technologies. I'm presently working for Global Process Automation, and that was the prime subcontractor to AET to do the job. I want to introduce Adam Hamer, who was my former boss and a very close friend, who works for AET as the division manager. And he's going to tell a little bit about his role in that, and we'll be moving forward to some actual videos of the fire and then how we solved the controls problem that had to be addressed in rapid time. So Adam, it's all yours.
Yes, I received a call in March of 2019 that a fire had destroyed the control system for the press at Plummer Forest Products, and also water damage from the fire had damaged the control system for their forming line. We were called in at the time to see if we could get the project done. We determined that it was such a large project and needed to be done in such a short period of time that we decided to get help from our friends at Global Process Automation, and utilizing the tools inside PlantPAx, we were able to integrate it together, working separately, but using the same tools to come out with the identical product. It worked out really well. And the plant to this day is still using those tools to go further and upgrade their system as they move forward. I hope you enjoy the video and the presentation, and we look forward to your questions.
And also I'd like to introduce Robert Anderson, who is the plant engineer at Plummer, and he's going to be narrating over the videos. And he was absolutely critical to the success of this whole thing because he knew the operation very well, and he also was very familiar with the PlantPAx tools. So we actually had two system integrators and the customer working with the same tools, and we hit the deck running without a big learning gap. So that's part of the success story. So Robert's going to be narrating over the fire video that was actually produced from the security cameras at the time of the fire, which was in March of 2019.
And I'll start the video.
Here we have folks, they've determined that there's something wrong above the press. What ultimately happened was a bearing failed on an exhaust fan above the press, dropped hot sparks on top of the press, which generated some of these smaller explosions, which turned into much larger explosions, as you'll see as the video goes on here. You can see the reaction of the people that were near it and how devastating it actually turns out to be here shortly as this moves on.
You can turn it on, guys.
Yeah, a few people escaped about this time, didn't they, Robert, when the fire got so bad?
Everybody started to evacuate the building at this point.
It was pretty fast, and it was amazingly quick how fast the fire expanded.
So these are videos that you took, Robert.
Yes, this is me walking into the actual operator booth for the press. You see completely destroyed, water damaged MCCs. The main PLC system, that's actually rack 0 right there for the press operation. And then we pan over, here's where the operator was actually sitting with the control consoles. I'll open up a console here and you can see that there's a remote system floating in water. The whole entire plant had a sprinkler system in it. It ran for nearly 5 hours before it was turned off. Set off upwards of 200 sprinkler heads.
Oh my goodness.
Part of the criteria of this job was to keep the operator consoles as they were, and so that to lessen the effects of the fire on the operators and keep them more familiar with the consoles. So we actually salvaged the consoles with the water in them, repainted them, and rebuilt them with new push buttons to make them function exactly as they were under the new PlantPAx system. Go ahead, Robert.
So these are some stills of the same, or the after effects of the fire, and I think the significant thing on this one is that it burned through the roof. So you have all the problems that Robert described, plus open to the weather. So we ended up using tarps, or they ended up using tarps to try to mitigate that. So thankfully the weather wasn't too bad, but there were definitely some rainstorms that they had to deal with. And I keep this shot in mind because we're going to show what it looks like now and what it looked like within 3 months of rebuilding and getting everything going. Do note that the I-beams at the top, they're massive and they're all charred, so it was massive structural damage. This is that control panel that is in the operator area, and the significant point here is the water damage is in this case was worse than the fire damage. And here's another shot to show this tarps and just the whole problem that we had to deal with. I think it's helpful to look at from the outside to see that this was the end of the process viewed from the outside of the building. So you can see it was really substantial. This is kind of an eye chart, but the point here is the Gantt chart gives us a start and finish date. We started in June of 2019. The fire was in March, and we had to have product out the door by the first week in September. Even though you can't see it real well, but that's what this represents. And I was working very closely with Robert at that time to make sure that every single day there wasn't anything, any time lost, and we were in track with, because we were working off-site at AET at the time to do the programming. So this Gantt chart is a little bit hard to see, but it's an overview of the whole timeline that we were working with. And the point here is that we started real work, including the electrical, in June, and we had to have product out the door in September. And that's the main takeaway there. But Adam, do you have a
one of the
comment?
points I'd like to make at this time, the plant is completely down, and all the employees, the owner of the plant was paying them in some manner to stay at the mill. So he had his whole production crew working, doing something at the time they were at the time of this reconstruction. And so it was imperative that we get the plant back up and running. And also he was purchasing product from other companies to supply his partners and his customers. So the pressure was on to get this job done in the time that we had to get it done. Am I correct with that, Robert?
Correct. There was roughly 70 families involved, impacted by this. The owner felt it was necessary for all folks involved to still have work. So they were all put to work actually helping rebuild the plant in one manner or another. Whether it was just pushing a broom and cleaning up, to painting, to actually doing construction work, rebuilding a lot of the damaged parts of the process. So it's a huge deal. 70 families were impacted.
Thank you. That's very helpful. So this is a top view of the IAB file that we created right out of the get-go. And that's just one of the several tools that we leverage to get going as fast as possible. Integrated architecture builder, for those who are not exactly familiar with the PlantPAx tools. But we all three were working with that. Adam created it initially, and I think everybody went to the music of that, which included the hardware purchases, integration with existing systems. It was huge for us.
It was a very valuable tool.
This is our own drawing, and the red indicates items that we had to replace. And a very important point here is we wanted to minimize the need for field wiring because if there was existing field wiring with legacy systems, we wanted to leverage those. So we only replaced those things which were fire damage with the plan that we would replace the other products that were not Rockwell over time. But given the schedule, we kept as much in place as we could.
I think Robert's working on that right now.
Yeah, that's right.
Moving forward.
This is actually the room we're in right now at AET. Back in the day, that's our Scrum whiteboard, and we had all these. Everybody was all hands on deck. Robert actually left from Post Falls and lived with in the Longview area for 6 weeks or more. And every day we were all sitting here working.
It was a mess.
It was an organized mess. So there are a couple of the P&ID drawings. These are kind of a plant overview from one line, and we'll be looking at the actual process running later. I don't know if we need to give a detailed description of how the process works at this point, but you'll see it with a later video. So this is a still of that one shot that we saw earlier. You can see how much damage there was. So the electrical and the panel work was really critical in terms of the project execution. And a main thing to say here is we used the Encompass partner Profibus modules to talk to the existing TI and Siemens IO. And so we had to coordinate that very tightly. We didn't feel we had the time luxury, as I said, to rip and replace all of that legacy stuff that still worked. It wasn't burned. And we leveraged the 1792 IFMs heavily because, again, we were on such a screaming fast schedule that we needed to, this helped us a lot. I mean, Adam, if you want to talk to that point, I mean, this is something important to the panels.
Well, the IFMs obviously help us wire the cabinets in a very fast way, and they're very organized. So we had multiple PLC cabinets that we had to put together and ship within weeks, and we were able to produce those panels in a very timely manner with the help of the IFM modules.
And this is a representative wiring diagram of an IFM for those who are not necessarily familiar with them. So it's already pre-done, and the cables just had to be cut to length and then landed, so that was a big help. But one of the things that was really critical is for the coordination of everybody on the mapping of the I/O, because we had the existing, we had new, we had more GPA guys, I think, in terms of the programming side. So it was really critical that you communicated.
Well, we had experts on Honeywell, we had experts on TI, and we had experts on Rockwell. So we joined forces. So yeah, we brought a lot of people together.
And so what we would do, and then Robert was involved on every point on these as we were going through it, both in the programming, the HMI, and then ultimately the field wiring all had to be wrung out, obviously. The significance of this slide is it represents many places in the spreadsheets that we generated that were red represented things that had to be changed. And it was really important that all three entities, Robert as the customer and APT and GPA, were on the absolute same sheet of music as we proceeded, especially with mapping to the existing Siemens and Texas Instrument. This represents a script that was in the Wonderware HMI that we converted to View, and that script was something that we felt was better done in logic. So we created 4 blocks of logic that enabled all of the relevant I/O in one swell FOUP, and then we could do with it as we wish. So this is a representative of the logic that replaced that HMI script from Wonderware. Now this shows just another example of some of the tools that were used within PlantPAx and programming. We used, of course, add-on instructions. We used library process objects and those kinds of things. I don't know if you, Adam, or Robert want to talk to this, but that was a really important piece to how we got this
Well, I think
done.
that's some of the benefits of using PlantPAx is the add-on instructions and the faceplates that come along with it that aided us in making a common feel and look throughout the whole system. How about you, Robert?
Yes, it enabled us to essentially do a lot of copy and pasting and run right down through a lot of I/O and all the motor structure. It sped things up very, very fast after we basically got one thing going. It went much faster after we got one thing lined out.
Yeah, and I think that's we probably found a few hidden things in that project, and being able to utilize these tools. It's like it wasn't such a big crisis when you find those missing motors or missing items.
So here are some more representative shots of some of the tools that we leveraged, including the conversion tool from Wonderware to View. And a very important part of this was, and this was mandated by not just Robert, but the whole customer, that they wanted the look and feel for the operators to be just exactly as close as possible to what they were used to. So we didn't try to do ISO 9000, grayscale, anything. We went straight with what the graphics were before.
There just wasn't time to get the operators up to speed and the speed that we tried.
So these are some more, actually these were taken a few weeks ago, so this is a year after they've been running, and Robert sent me these pictures, and you can see some of the HMI graphics on View that we leveraged, the faceplates and so forth. Again, more of the same. You want to talk to any of this, Robert, in terms of how it helped in the operations?
Yes, trying to make it as original to the operators was very critical. They had very little education time when we started back up. It was very familiar to them. They were able to go to the screens that they originally went to. They looked very familiar. So navigation was great for them. It sped up the whole startup process. Operators could actually give feedback and say, oh, this doesn't work like it used to. It should have worked like this, and the minor changes could be made. Huge impact, huge impact.
Now, the third batch was able to be sold, wasn't it? I mean, the third run through this, or this is what I heard, or is that wrong?
Okay, the third press load that came out of the press was on grade product, was sellable product after we started the plant back up. That was also because of navigation in the HMI system and all that. The operators were very familiar with the process and able to start the process up and navigate through it quite fast.
And the significance here is these are recipes, right? I'm looking at a distance, isn't that what that is?
Yeah, it's pop-up recipes.
Yep. So you want to talk to that a little bit, Robert?
Yeah, so we implemented the old system was recipes were dealt with through Honeywell MeasureX system. We wanted to pull that into the process, the PLC system, so we used Recipe Pro for that. And then here you have some actual press cycle. It showing you the position of the press, some of the trending of that. I believe the next, here we go. Now, what's interesting about this is you saw images earlier in the fire. Here is the station after it's rebuilt, how clean it looks. You can see the consoles are exactly the way they were before. Worked out quite well. More of the consoles before and after.
Yep, before and after, which is amazing.
Yeah, they looked identical, so it was very easy for the operators to pick up on that and go right back to work.
The significance of this shot is that it shows all three of us working together, that be AET, GPA, and plumber, during the startup. And look at how the control room and the access is just really transformed, and also the process. So this was a big deal, and we're actually working the press and a number of other things at this point. So Robert's going to talk through this area.
Here's a little rundown of the process. Right here we have the forming line. In the lower part of the picture, the mat is coming out of the former. And you'll see it travel by. And now there are single sheets. They're being loaded into the loader. 25 of those will load into the loader at one time. As the load gets full, that load will be pushed into the press as another load is being pulled out that's been pressed. We'll move down here towards the loader. And you can see this loading action a little closer. And then the press itself. The press is currently up in the air, just about to finish a press load. As we move down here, you'll see that the unloading process is happening at the same time as a continuous process. Right here, the mat is actually separated from the call plate. So there's your finished board separating from the call plate as it comes out of the unloader. $25 at a time, one piece at a time. Continuous process.
So you're running 24/7, and what's the end result of all this? What's the product you're producing?
What's the product we're producing? We produce about half of our product is an underlayment product that goes out to Home Depot and Lowe's, and the other half of our product is actually an industrial high-grade product that gets laminated in many different lamination processes. Here you'll see the panel actually coming out of what's called the board cooler. There was 65 panels loaded into that, one in, one out. Now they're going down a saw line being sawed to size. So the lengthwise is being sawed, and then the trim end is being sawn.
You can see it's quite an extensive process that we were able to get back up and running, including motion. I mean, there's motion, there's servo drives, there's all kinds of different items that we had to program back in, and utilizing the PlantPAx system helped speed that process and get this back up and running, because there's a million different things going on.
I think we ended up somewhere in, 2,500 to 3,000 points of I/O.
I think you're right.
A lot of I/O.
was.
So just a point of reference, this was all the Hulk was burned out on the that you saw about 20 minutes ago. This is with the open ceilings and the burnt I-beams and the water everywhere.
Yeah, this was the former, right? That was more damaged by water than by fire.
Correct. Yes, there was water damage throughout everything seen in this video. You can see the call plates returning on the back line there. Completely continuous process, constantly running in a circle.
So talk a little bit about how much volume you put out this last year, percentage over maybe the previous year, how much downtime at 24/7. You want to address that?
So we took off running in September of 2019, basically with one shift, working up to, by November, to multiple shifts running 24/7. So yeah, September, October, November, we were running the plant at full capacity, 24/7, back to normal. Here in this video, we have the actual Honeywell scanning system, a nuclear source system that's taking weight measurements of the mats as they cross through.
So the weight is actually derived from the Honeywell, right? So instead of using
Correct.
scale, you're using the Honeywell to figure out what the weight is.
Yes.
By
So
formula.
this system actually was not put in place until many months after the plant started back up, due to its it was being built in China and shipped to the United States, and there was quite a process to do that with the nuclear source.
Okay. You want to talk us through this? It's our last video. Tell us.
So here is a press cycle. We're going to actually see this thing open up. There's a 3,000 gallon hydraulic unit that operates this press. The press produces 1,625 ton, about 600 pounds per square inch. You'll see a load being pulled out. And now a load will be.
Things, Robert, I found on the press was the fact that you're using Rockwell drives to control the speed of the closing by operating the pumps at a different speed, and that was how you. That was new to me in this process.
Yes, there's two PowerFlex 700S drives mastered and slaved together.
Yeah, that was amazing. Those weren't damaged in the fire, correct? Those
Correct.
But we incorporated them in the new PlantPAx system.
Correct.
I think that is the last one. Excuse me.
So this is our last slide, and I'm glad for an opportunity to just say how amazing the experience was. It was great working together with everybody, and what else to say? I mean, it was a great team effort. We used the tools, we leveraged everything that we could think of to get it done. 3 months from fire to product was just crazy, and I think everybody played a huge part to that. And for those of you who are interested, this is Mount Adams, which is not too far from where we are in Longview. It's not close to Plummer, but that my son took that shot with his phone, and I thought it would be appropriate to close on that. You guys want to say anything final? Parting shots?
No, it was a great project. The experience was great. I was ultimately pleased in the ease of communicating the style of programming we utilized because of the tools inside PlantPAx. Couldn't really ask for a better customer in Robert and the gang over in Plummer, and the help from GPA was indispensable. It was a great team effort.
Robert, you want to close it out?
Yeah. I'm not glad that the situation occurred. However, I'm glad that the folks that I met and got to work with AET and GPA went very, very well for us. We communicated quite well, worked together quite well. Everybody understood the timeline as we started moving and how fast we wanted to move. The PlantPAx was an awesome platform to implement. We are actually currently adding to that platform in our process, adding more of our process to it to create a plant-wide situation where this platform is running our entire plant from beginning to end. It laid an awesome platform in here for us to build on and grow, and the data that's coming out of it now, we're utilizing on a daily basis, moving our process forward, refining our process, optimizing our process, becoming more productive, building a better product every day that goes by. So,
Thank you. It's a pleasure working with you, Robert. You are amazing. I mean, your knowledge of the Rockwell, the Siemens, the TI, and then the process above everything else. It was a great experience. So I just want to thank everybody for joining us, and we're going to go to a question and answer session next. So we've had one question of whether anybody got hurt, and we're happy to say that nobody was hurt. That's really noteworthy. And so far, we don't have any other questions that I can see unless you guys are seeing them.
Well, there was a question about the specifics of the communications with the Honeywell system. Robert, can you answer that? That was probably your...
Yeah, we used Ethernet with RS Links OPC.
Robert, you want to talk to the complexity of the Honeywell aspect, just because I think you deserve some credit here, because it looked like for a while that it was not going to do the job, and I'm very impressed that it all worked out.
Yeah, the Honeywell side of this was a bit of a black box situation. There wasn't a ton of information on it. There was enough, though, to understand what it was doing with the process, because originally the Honeywell is what controlled all the process items. Many of the additives, the line speed changes and things were all controlled by Honeywell. That all got moved into the new DCS system, PlantPAx. So much of the Honeywell had to be broken apart and dug through to figure out what those components were exactly and how they were being utilized, and then to change them over to PlantPAx. That was quite a bit of work between myself and Pat with GPA at the time.
There's a question about the driving factor of using PlantPAx and some of the benefits we saw ahead of the time. You were familiar with PlantPAx before this project started. You utilized it with your motion, hadn't you, Robert? Or you
yes, it was something that I'd actually looked into prior to this situation with the fire, and had grand plans of someday implementing it. The fire just so happened to make that situation occur. So it worked out well in the end.
Yeah, I think time frame wise,
one of the questions is,
would have doubled or tripled, right, if we'd not used PlantPAx. I mean, under normal circumstances.
Yeah, I think we would have had. Number one, we probably would have been using some eBay components to try to resurrect the system. We would have had a great deal of troubleshooting for quite a period of time to iron out all the bugs. We were able to do a lot of that pre-hand. with PlantPAx. We were able to whip through the I/O checkouts. We were able to utilize old labeling and new labeling together on all the I/O, which worked out quite well within the program and outside of the program, actually in the panels. It made things go quite fast. How many
One other
people?
question was, were the MCCs intelligent?
They were not. The MCCs were not intelligent MCCs. They were loaded with 509 series starters where we had starters, PowerFlex drives where we needed drives, and also Yaskawa drives where we needed drives. I see there's another question here about the amount of people you had staffing the project. From an electrical standpoint, we have upwards of 8 or 9 of us there between AET and GPA, and then on site I had about 8 people also doing wiring and pipe and wire.
And somebody asked about the Honeywell controller, a C200 controller before. I don't believe there was any Honeywell controller, was there, or was that built into those scanners?
It was when he's calling a C200 controller, it was the array system, and it was Ray 2 or 3, I think, was the vintage of the system. Yeah, it was ran on an old NT or Microsoft NT box that had been actually virtualized by myself and put into VMware, running it on an ESXi server. That actually I allowed it to run forever. But the damage was all done to the scanning system itself, and the nuclear portions of it were all damaged from water. So it had to be completely replaced with the latest Ray system from Honeywell.
Robert, do you want to speak to the integration effort to the existing platforms? Just how you felt that worked, and just some of the complexities of that?
So we had a multitude of things to integrate with. Ethernet, number one. Number two is we had Profibus. Number three is we actually had serial RS-232. We also had some RS-485. We utilized anything that wasn't Ethernet. We utilized Profisoft modules for communication between those protocols, which is actually worked out quite well, probably better than most of us thought were going to work out, and has continued to work quite well. And will eventually be completely replaced. There's still remote cabinets with Siemens devices in there, Siemens I/O. Ultimately will be completely replaced with all Rockwell.
Do you want to speak to the data analytics piece? You alluded to that during the presentation on how you've optimized the system using the tools you got.
There is a great deal of data to be had coming out of the PlantPAx, and it's been a little over a year now, and we started harvesting that probably a few months ago, and are starting to really dive into some of the data coming out of the system, some of the timing and the consistencies of the process or inconsistencies of the process, and utilizing that to make changes, to update it a little bit more, to refine it, which will be a continuous process. as we go on and collect more and more data. And it's been easier to harvest that data on this platform also. We've made numerous large HMI screens for production type data, for some of the process data of where it's at, where it should be, or where it should be compared to, the standards, current run levels. I mean, there's just, it's huge. It's growing by the day and continues to grow. And made a platform that we are going to be able to really build something out of in the future and continue to build on.
We've got some more questions. You're on such a roll, Robert. You want to keep going? You see some of the next ones?
What do we got here? Let's see. Is there another page here? Oh, I got another page. Wow. Okay.
Yeah. We got 2 more pages. We're getting behind.
Yes, we are. I'm seeing that. So we had a question here about control schematics. Yes. Originally, we had very little schematic information, prints on the system. So as we went through this, a lot of this came out of my head of how things worked originally and how they were supposed to work. And we were able to, as we implemented new panels and started introducing all the I/O to the system, we were able to complete schematics were made.
There's a question about time savings using IFMs. They are a huge cost savings or time saver as far as building panels. I'm sure we saved probably, I would say, a week off each panel as we built them utilizing the IFMs. I mean, if you hand wire all that, it's very, very time consuming. So those are a very big benefit. We use them all the time. That's our go-to way of wiring method, unless they're specified otherwise. Longest lead time item were the.
Bjorn asked if we used any. Oh, excuse me. I heard it pause and I jumped in, and I think there's a delay for me. Bjorn asked if we used any of the Rockwell global partners, or we did all this ourselves. And the answer is, as far as I know, we did it all ourselves. Rockwell did assist us in some ways, getting materials. Do you want to speak to the Rockwell involvement, either of you guys?
Well, I think we utilized some of the local Rockwell people to just confirm our design in the integrated architecture. I think we went back and forth a couple different times because we were trying to determine whether using the TI system would still be an acceptable PlantPAx system, and they determined that yes, using that, we were in a PlantPAx situation, even though we incorporated some of the older I/O with the full intention of we're going to switch it out later on. But the project moved forward with the help of their information and coaching us in a few spots. But yeah, that was a team effort with Rockwell.
I see there's a question there. Did we utilize PlantPAx system, any of the dashboarding features of Vantage Point? I alluded to that just a little bit ago. We have made some dashboard HMI displays with Vantage Point on, and utilized that on some large screens that are placed in the plant in a couple of locations. I actually did that just recently, so none of those pictures are in this presentation. But yes, we have utilized Vantage Point at this point, and we will continue to probably utilize it and grow with it.
One of the questions was, what HMI did we use? Well, we went with USE, and we converted from Wonderware, as was mentioned. So We didn't go with the ISO 9000 graphics standard because, as was mentioned a couple times, we wanted everything to look exactly as much as possible to what the operators had used previously in the WonderWare system. So our screens looked as close to the WonderWares as possible. Behind those screens, like I said, we got rid of some scripting, quite a bit of it, I think.
Yes.
Well, Adam, what do you think the longest lead time issue was? What was the gating thing that would have put us way into past September if it had gone haywire?
The biggest thing obviously was the Honeywell. The Honeywell was the lead item from where. But I think the only other thing was the odd IFM modules. Some of the bases I think were a little bit, or the cables. It's one of those things.
Yeah, I think we're having issues with cables and a couple of modules. They were after we had already built basically what was going to go into that cabinet as a whole package. We ended up in a couple cases with waiting on cables and a couple of modules, not affecting the startup time in any way, but they were longer lead times than we expected.
Yeah, I think that was the big thing. The PLC hardware was, I think, pretty readily accessible or available, but the IFMs are always a little bit tweaky. But
Robert, do you envision using any kind of cloud stuff later? I mean, once you get everything the way you like it now, would you want to do some cloud dashboarding, or what's your long-term plans, I guess? What's your dream sheet?
We are, I mean, with the Vantage Point, that's kind of somewhat of a web-based system where you push it out to kind of a web type browser situation. And we are just starting to utilize that. And ultimately, I do hope to do more from the web on this system. Actually, one of our press operators bugs me every day. He says, I want to be able to run this press from home. So my goal is to figure out how to run this press from home. So we keep adding and tweaking.
That was my next question. I was going to ask you if you had remote access plans.
Yes, we also have that going on too. So yeah, we plan on going bigger and more internet-y type stuff. Yes, and getting it out to the folks that want to see some of the, the key elements of the process, I think is going to be a pretty big deal. It'll answer a lot of questions that people have just by being able to look at a dashboard. So
there's a question.
Go ahead, Adam.
Well, there was a question about virtualizing PlantPAx servers and then using bin managers, and yes to both those questions.
Yes.
We'd had previous experience with that and just love the whole architecture, so we capitalized on that also. So, yep.
Says, have we utilized asset management features?
Did you guys use the Asset Center?
We have not utilized it yet. Plan to, but we just haven't done it yet. There's so many levels of things here to implement, and at the moment we have not done that. But we definitely plan to.
It's a great product. We use it on a few other projects, and it's a great tool for troubleshooting and understanding how the system changed, or who changed it, or how it changed. For troubleshooting, yeah, that's a great tool.
Robert, do you want to address the virtualization question? Were the PlantPAx servers virtualized?
But I think Adam kind of addressed that there. We prior to this, we had most of the process was virtualized, and then so it was a no-brainer to do the same thing with the PlantPAx and add the thin manager aspect and virtualize everything right out of the gate. So, and the new Honeywell was immediately virtualized too, as was the old was already virtualized. So it all came together. Communications across that platform works out a lot better. The power from that platform is just enormous. What you can do, awesome platform to work on.
Well, we're down to kind of the cutoff time. Do you want to talk, just close it out with a little bit about your business projections for the future? I know you kind of hit that a couple times. Is there, one of the questions had to do with that about future expansion. You envision growing because of this?
Actually, we're bringing the PlantPAx platform into our process. A few of my crew also have familiarity with PlantPAx, and it's actually opened the doors wide open for us to add on to the system. And we're currently in the process of building about 6 panels in-house and converting an entire Siemens S7 system out on our dryer system and our breakdown areas where we mill the product and prep it for coming into forming. That process is going to get completely converted to PlantPAx and built onto this system and added, which will be one more step to an entire plant site on PlantPAx. So yes, we are definitely expanding.
Well, I want to thank everybody for joining us. It's been a little bit dicey because I've had a delay on my end, so I didn't mean to step on people when they're talking, but it's okay. We've had really a lot of people attending, and the interesting thing is most people that started stayed through the whole presentation. It's been really a pleasure for us to host this, and it's been great reliving the experience. Man, it's been fun for us to just go back and see what actually happened. Life moves on, and we've kind of moved on to other things, and this is great reliving it. So I want to wish everybody a happy PSUG, what's left of it, and any auto fair at home that you're going to do, and wish you all the best. Hope you stay safe, and have a great Thanksgiving.
Yep. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, thank you.